Well, we're really getting there now. We've nearly covered every button on the plane. We're in the final stretch. Nearly. Still one more panel after this. But, again, stick with me. Because I hope you found this interesting so far, that we're trying to cover basically every button, switch and system, so you can understand basically what on earth does this whole plane do. We're not talking about SOPs, we're talking about how it works so you can understand it. For SOPs, that's up to however you want to interpret it, however you want to fly it. We've got the checklist in there and you know how it works now, or you should have a better understanding of it. So let's keep going. Up here we have FMS1, FMS2, they're independent and work independently of each other. In the real aircraft, both of ours do not mirror the displays, so you can individually input things, which is very, very nice, and also very, very complicated to program. But anyway, moving on. It's just, as you can tell, that was a lot of work. We have these indicators here. I hope they're not too small to see, but we've got VOR, course, ILS, course, VOR, course, and shown here. Why does... In fact, why don't we just get a bit of a closer view of this panel? In fact, why don't we just get a bit of a closer view of this panel? Okay, that's better. Now I can see a bit better along with you as well. So we've got some dashes, we've got some stuff here. We've just said we've got VOR course, ILS course, VOR course. What does it mean? What does it matter? Well, you can manually tune VORs, and I'm not going to go into what a VOR is because we're pretty far in depth now. If you've made it this far, you probably know what a VOR is as well. And an ILS, the instrument landing system. You set the frequency for landing here. So if our frequency was 1055 and an inbound course of 268, we would set it like that. And that's how you set it in the ILS. It is not automatically tuned from the FMS. I will say that again. It is not automatically tuned from the FMS. If you do not set your ILS frequency and your course here, you will not be able to land, or you'll not be able to do an ILS landing anyway. So don't expect it to do it automatically. Like my favourite phrase, more modern Airbus aircraft, you have to set it like a Boeing. I don't say that as an insult, by the way. It's just, that is how it works, like a Boeing. So, going on to a little bit more of a weirdness here, a bit of a quirky A300-ness. You saw me press the progress button there, and you can see we have A, and then TNT, A, TNT. This means it's auto-tuned the Tango November Tango VOR, because this aircraft was a pioneer of automatic navigation tuning. So rather than you have to tune in every single VOR as you fly along, it will do it automatically on the ones it thinks you need to see. So it thinks, I think they are in here, they're doing this approach, so I think they need to see this one. So you don't have to manually tune the VORs as you fly around Europe, the world, wherever. You don't have to do it. It will do it itself, which is lovely. That's absolutely an amazing feature. Thank you, Mr. Airbus, and thank you, Mr. Airbus, for continuing that feature through to the modern ones, because it's great. No one enjoys flying along, tuning in nav VORs all the time just so it's in line with it when you have a fully functioning FMS. You're flying something like a 727, that's the charm that you're using a VOR, but if you've got an FMS and you still have to manually tune the VORs, it's kind of a bit like, come on, you know, just work it out, do it for me, which is what the A300 could already do. Let's just slightly reposition our view. Okay, there we go. So now let's bring up the progress page on here again, so we can see Tango, November Tango, and this is dashed out. And it's dashed out when the FMS, so let me just clear this message, let me just clear all the messages in fact, are taking control of the tuning. So that makes sense? So it's dashed when it's taking control of it automatically, and it has a little A standing for automatic. It's not rocket science, but that's what it stands for. So if we manually put one in. So I want to try and pick up the Charlie Papa Tango, the Compton VOR. Put it in, and it goes, okay, you want the Compton, so it's R, which stands for remote tuning. So it's done it itself, but we typed it in, so it's not its choice, it's our choice. So if you want to tune a VOR, you can just type the ident in. You don't have to manually twiddle the frequency, you can just type it in there. If we clear it, if I cleared the right thing would help, it will go automatically back to Tango November Tango, because like that's what I want to do as the FMS. Like, hey, I don't want to tune the Compton. No, that's not what I want to do. I want to tune this, so it does it itself. Hope that makes sense. Let's move on to how we truly manually tune the VORs. Well, why would these displays be there if we couldn't do that? So we'll come back to that in a moment. So back to this little selector here. Notice we didn't talk about this little switch here on purpose, where we have VOR, NAV, ILS. So at the moment it's in NAV, so it's basically the aircraft is taking control of tuning of stuff in terms of the VORs. If we click it into VOR, we can now manually tune the VORs. So NAV, automatically tuning the VORs. If we put it into ILS, it will display the ILS stuff that we need on our primary flight display. So that's what we're telling it, I want to do an ILS approach. You click it into this and it will display it. It will fly it without it, but it will display it on there, like the LS push button on there. I'm not even going to say the phrase, you know, like the LS push button. Let's leave it with that. So let's do that again. And this time let's try and get a view where we can see both. A bit more zoomed out, but you know which buttons we're pressing now, so there's nothing crazy there. Okay, so we can see both. Okay, so you can see both now. So if I move this to VOR, notice there's quite a large delay, and boom. Then this side is now shown, so we can tune whatever we want to tune. And you can actually see, that on this side it says M in the frequency, so we've manually tuned the frequency there. It's not remote tuned or auto tuned, it's manually tuned, and it will stay in this if we're doing this. So if you're doing a VOR approach, this is the sort of stuff you need to do. We're not going to talk about that now, that's even more advanced than where we are at this moment in time, but there's one on the first officer's side, so if I click it also, there's one on the first officer's side that works exactly the same way. If you move it to VOR, then you can tune the VOR in here. And if you put it in ILS, it'll do the same thing, and in NAV, it'll do the same thing. So I think that makes sense, and it's actually a really neat feature. Really neat. I think it's a really nice, and you can see where they went with this over time to make it more advanced and make it more sophisticated, but this was the beginning of it here. So let's put it back into NAV, and you can see it blanks it, and then it goes back to auto tuning. Great, easy life. That's how I love it. So that's this section finished. Let's move back down to the pedestal, and then we're nearly done. And then we have the mammoth FMS to talk about, which is going to obviously be a separate video. Right, so here we are, the final throws, the last little bit of the pedestal, and then we're done with the other one panel after that, and then we're done. Like, promise me, honestly, we're getting there. We've got the trim wheel. Let's try and blast through this. Trim wheel's there. It shows its numbers down and up. You can set it by pressing the button on the yoke. The button shown here. You press it, it moves in the direction that you want. That's how you can set the trim. Obviously, if you have an assigned button, then the trim works that way, where it basically just takes it. Trim wheel moves at different speeds depending on your airspeed. It's actually below, I think it's below 240 knots. It gets faster and faster and faster progressively, so it's not based on your flap or slap position, it's just based on your airspeed. So actually the aircraft trims very quickly at approach speed, so you really need very short blips, like blip, blip, blip on the trim. If you go and watch an A300 or an A300-600 cockpit video, you will see that they really just trim a little bit. If you hold it, you get completely out of control, And the reason the trim is so powerful is because of these monster engines that can cause huge pitch ups that you need to counteract with trim. This is the speed brake, nothing crazy about this. You pull it up to arm it, and then to disarm it you just push it back down again, and then it will be disarmed, just like that. And then you can pull it out, etc, etc. Nothing crazy, works in a fairly conventional manner, will automatically deploy if they are armed on landing or in case of an RTO. This little bit here, we said we were going to come back to this. If you remember the accumulator pressure, little gauge thing, if it's outside of the green arc and we need to charge it, you can press and hold this button and it will charge the accumulator back up using the yellow electrical pump. So using the pump, it will just run that pump and it will do it. Other Airbuses need this feature. It's a great feature, really like it. They don't have it and it's kind of a bit annoying. I think they were on the right track here. They should have just kept it. Maybe other ones do. I know that quite a few of the ones generationally after this, they removed it. Parking brake, it's in the on position right now. You can click it and it will remove it, and you can do that and it comes on. It's kind of hinged from the side, or pivoted. It's very weird, like a kind of like a, I don't know how you describe it, like a sort of a walking cane. It's kind of a weird, but it works, so it's fine. Here we have the takeoff config test, so I'm not going to press that because we won't get lots of dings because it's not ready. Again, this wasn't introduced on the A300, but it's quite a neat little feature. Rather than having to move the thrust levers forward to give you a beep beep, you know, like a master caution, master warning, whatever you want to call it on a Boeing, to say, hey, it's not set up for configuration, you can press a button and it runs a self-test and will, if you don't hear anything, then you're good. If you hear a warning, it will tell you what you haven't got set. It won't just give you a noise to say, work it out. Like, unfortunately, that was one of the contributing factors of a 737 Helios that crashed, where they had the warning, but it's the same warning as the depressurization or non-pressurized aircraft warning. It's the same noise in the 737. So in the A300 it would have simply have been like, yeah, your pressurization system doesn't work, you need to fix it, press this, this and this. Hopefully it would have had a very different outcome. But that's what that button does. Emergency cancel, normal cancel, not 100% modeled at this time. It's to do with the ECAM, to do with clearing emergencies, but there's part functionality there. We hopefully want to come back to that at a bit of a later stage, but it's not commonly used on the line anyway. So, the flaps. This is going to take a bit of explaining actually. I know I said we're nearly there, but we need to talk about flaps. They're kind of important. So, the A300 has a very, I would say odd, but it isn't odd, configuration. If you initially think about it, it seems odd, but if you compare it to my favourite phrase, I'm not even going to say it, then it makes more sense. You have 15-0, 15-15, 15-20, you can see it written here, 30-40. What does it mean? Not that complicated. So along the left side, this is the slat value, and on the right side, that is the flap value, in degrees, of course. So 15-0, 15 degrees of slats, 0 degrees of flaps. Now that's why it's weird. You can take off with no flaps in this aircraft. Perfectly normal, happens all the time, and you can even do it on the EFB, and for longer runways we only have the data for 15-0, so you will have to do, I'm sure you'll have to do some 15-0 takeoffs in this aircraft. So yeah, weird, right? So you're taking off with no flaps. Cool. 15-15, 15 degrees of slats, 15 degrees of flaps. 15-20, 15 degrees of flaps, so sorry, 15 degrees of slats, so no change of slats. 20 degrees of flaps. 30-40, 30 degrees of slats, 40 degrees of flaps. So what we can take from this is the 15-20 to 30-40 is a big jump. It's double the slats and double the flaps in degrees. So it's commonly referred to on more modern Airbus types as configuration full, and actually I believe that they've now adopted that term as flaps full on the A300 as well. So 30-40 can be referred to flaps full, because it's all the flaps and all the slats. So this isn't going to help you if you've flown a Boeing before, but sorry, we're going to go a bit Airbusy here. I assume you like Airbuses, because you're listening to this video, so and you got this far. So on a modern Airbus, you have config 1 plus F, config 2, config 3, config 4. The easiest way to get your head around the A300 is to apply exactly the same logic. C, and I say C as in like C, so C look, C 15.0 as config 1, C 15.15 as config 2, C 15.20 as config 3, and C 30.40 as config 4, and then everything else remains the same. So in an A320, an A330, an A340, A350, A380, what configurations can you take off in? Drum roll please, maybe you'll know, maybe you don't. It's config 1 plus F, 2 and 3. So apply the same logic here. Which ones can we take off with? We can use 15.0, 15.15, 15.20. Exactly the same. Okay, in a modern Airbus, which configurations can we use to land? We can use config 3 and config full, so flaps full. Which ones can we use here? 15.20, 30.40, so it's the same. So, and if you tend to think of them the same way, you end up just flying it like you would. So when you're on base to land, you end up with 15.0. When you start going down the glide, you put 15.15, then gear down, then 15.20, then 30.40. If you just use it like that, you're golden. Just think of it the same way as a more modern Airbus with funny names. That's the way to think of it. If you're now a Boeing person and thinking, I have no idea what I just heard, basically you've got only 4 settings, and we can use the first 3 for takeoff and use the last 2 for landing. That's what you need to take away from this. You can take off in 15.0, 15.15, 15.20. You can land 15.20, 30, 40. What are some of the things we need to do? So this switch up here, you need to click to 15.20 if you do intend to land with 15.20, because the plane doesn't know. You need to tell it, hey, I'm doing that, otherwise it's going to have a bit of a moment at you. And that's all fully modeled on touchdown. The switch will automatically return to 30.40. Wow, that was a big mouthful. If you weren't lost already, I'm sure you will now. But you need to get this insight into this aeroplane, otherwise it's going to always be confusing. And I'm trying to equate it to what I know people know, if that makes sense. So let's move on. We're nearly there. Stick with me. I hope we've made it this far. Radios. Wow, something simple. My goodness, we're somewhere where we can all understand. You just set a frequency. Look at this. It's crazy simple. And then the light shows the one that you're talking on. So I'm now on this one, and now on that one. Yeah, I think I need to say anything else. This doesn't do anything because it's to do with squall. I think it can't be modelled in the flight sim. So, audio control panel, as I'm going to call it. If you want to, I am not going to go crazy in depth on the radios, because if you need to learn how an airliner's radio works, they seem quite daunting to begin with, but that's not what this tutorial is for. It's for how A300 works. So, same thing, I want to listen. So I want to listen and transmit on VHF1. So you've got it there. You can click between them and choose which ones you're listening to. So now I'm listening to everything because I'm just that caring kind of person that loves listening. Not really, just a joke. This one is the volume for these labels here. You can see them if you move a little bit further up. That's it really. I'm not going to go any more in depth. It's not complicated. It makes sense. The radios make sense. There's nothing crazy about it. Tuning the ADF. So you want to set your ADF here. You can set it here. Then you can switch between them. So now I'm on this one, now I'm on that one, now I'm on this one, now I'm on that one. These have no function. Again, because it's to do with a flight sim thing. That's ADF and ANT. It's not in any sim. It's not just because we chose not to do it. Here we have the transponder. It's fairly conventional, so you set the squawk like this with the inner and the outer knobs, so bigger and smaller, ident is there, test, you press it and it will, I'm not going to do it, but it has a test. You're not mandated to do it, you don't need to do it, but it will run a TCAS test. This is the TCAS. We have standby, transponding, TARA, TA only, so you only get your alerts, you don't get your actions that you need to do. System 1, System 1, System 2, System 1, System 2 I should say, there you go, it's just a flick between the two. This is above or below, and this little section here, so sort of this bit here and this bit there is to do with the TCAS. So if you want to zoom the TCAS out, you must press this button, range, it makes it go bigger, and it makes it go smaller, the range, so it zooms it out. Same with this one, it shows the threats that are above and the threats that are below, and that's basically all you need to know for this panel. Talked about this, aileron trim, rudder trim, okay, so we can set some rudder trim in like this, or like that, and then if we want to reset it, you click reset, and it resets it back to 0. That's about it. It sets trim, it's rudder trim, nothing complicated. Aileron trim, same thing, only Airbus ever to have aileron trim, fun fact, is these ones, I'm not even going to say the phrase, they don't have it. Same thing on the first officer side. Lighting, this has no function because it's not being able to model the sim, so it's there, it works, but it doesn't do anything. This is one of the lighting controls for the pedestal, so you can see it increases, decreases the background lighting. This one is the same thing, but for the overhead panel above us. So we have the push button here called the AIDS event, and I think the best way to describe it is an unfortunate acronym for Airbus that they chose this, but it stands for Aircraft Integrated Data System, and it's effectively a lot of the systems altogether fall under this category of AIDS. And if you click the AIDS event button, it leaves a little log on the data recorder so engineers can come back. No one uses it, I don't think anyone ever did, but it's there, and that's what it does. It's on modern Airbuses as well. Weather radar, it works in a very conventional manner. You have System 1, System 2, the gain control. I'm not going to explain what gain does at this stage. This is tilt, again I'm not going to talk about tilt. Has no auto tilt, you must choose yourself. Test, weather, turbulence map, again makes sense, it's the test mode, shows you the weather pattern, the turbulence, and on the map, and that's about it. Below this we have an ACARS system. This is where it is at the moment, it's in op. We're looking at what we can do with that in the future with integrations into the sim, and we have one more panel and then we're done. This has been very long, I am fully aware. We've still got to do the FMS, but stick with it. I know I keep saying that. Sound like some sort of motivational speaker. Shouldn't be. Maybe you're enjoying it if you are. If this has a comment, leave a comment. I don't know, send us an email, buy the product, whatever you want. Let us know that you love it. You've made it this far, well done. Let's move on to the final panel. Okay, you might think this is a bit of a strange view for the final panel, but kind of isn't. I've got a twofold thing to do. Up here, this is the radio transmitter button that you can kind of toggle on and off. Obviously it has no function in the sim because you have no push to talk button, you're just pressing a keyboard button and it transmits on your network of choice. But what we've done, and I actually really like this, is rather than click on the yoke to hide it, you click this and off, and now both yokes are gone, and then you just click it again and they come back. Now the advantage of this is if it's moving around all over on the approach, then you can just turn it off and on and off and on at your heart's content. All the buttons on the yoke, they actually work. So this is the autopilot disconnect, which you need to press and press once again. Like I told you, the trim works. And let's listen. There's a noise. It's called the ruler noise. It's a noise to warn you that the trim is moving in an excessive amount. What a weird noise, right? Fun fact, they still use that noise on the ATR today. These are sort of a standby backup sort of thing, I think is the best way to describe it. You can see you can swap the screens around here. This is to do with the terrain mode, so you can turn the terrain off, flap override if you've got flap problems. We're not going to go crazy in depth, like I said, this is all sort of failure stuff. My flight directors have failed, I need a backup of the SGU, the signal generator unit. See, it says EFIS SGU, see, it's all tying together into one big loop now. And the final thing that we're going to look at is this little panel here. It is the lighting panel. It's replicated exactly the same on the other side. What do? Map light, there's a light that illuminates on the EFB. You can't really see it in this shot, but it illuminates there. Captain and instrument lights, so this is the backlighting for all of the sort of instruments that are across the plane. The backlighting of this section, I told you the overhead one is on the bottom of the pedestal. Main instrument floodlights, it's a floodlight that comes from under the main instrument panel, and that's it really. I mentioned that we have the storm light and the dome light, remember, on the overhead. There are the other lighting controls, and you'll see that these affect those LCD background lights. We made it all the way. So, thanks for sticking with it. We're going to move on to the FMS next. The FMS is a large topic, but we're not going to cover every aspect of the FMS. I'm not going to treat you as if like you don't know how FMS works. Pretty sure you do. And there's absolutely no need to baby you through it. We're just going to do a standard setup and talk about what we do in what order. So thank you very much, and we'll join you in that lesson.